On this week's Hockey Inside Out, has Antti Niemi played his last NHL game? And can the Canadiens trust Charlie Lindgren? I wouldn't trust him. Welcome to this week's show. My name is Adam Sesser. I have here right beside me, joining me once again, Julian McKenzie from Habs Eyes on the Prize. From TSN 690, Dan Robertson. And back from his exodus, Mr. Stu Cowan.
Do you trust him?
I don't. To be honest, I don't trust him for a bit. Let's start the show. With just 12 games remaining in their season and the Canadiens doing their best on-ice interpretation of Netflix's A Series of Unfortunate Events, things are not looking good for the team. Do you think Charlie Lindgren will get a start in goal before the season's end?
He might get one.
Yeah?
He might get one because the Canadiens have one more set of back-to-back games. They play in Buffalo and then Buffalo here and then in Carolina next Saturday, Sunday. So if there's one game that they might give Carey Price a rest, it's a Saturday against Buffalo, but I don't think they will.
No?
I think they're going to ride Carey Price right to the end. I think that they have to. I mean, Charlie Lindgren is going to practice with the team. Claude Julien said that Price probably will have a lot of practices off now. That's one of the reasons I call Lindgren up, so they can have two goalies for practice. But I think they ride Carey the rest of the way.
I think they will too. That's a weird back-to-back. I mean, it's tough travel-wise because it's a long flight to Raleigh, and by the time the Canadiens get settled, the whole works. But it's the same. It's the same for every player. They have to do it too, the back-to-back. I wonder if we blow back-to-backs out of proportion for goalies sometime. I will say he might get one start, and I hope it is the final day of the regular season against the Leafs, because that'll mean that they sewed up a playoff spot. But I look forward. I think something tells me when we get to April the 6th, I guess it is, that might be for the Canadiens to get in, and that'll be a hell of a game. But I think Price is in for the duration here.
You travel the team charter, though, so what time would they arrive in Raleigh, probably?
Oh, boy. We would get out by 11:30. Yeah, by the time we get to the hotel, it would probably be between 1:30 and 2. So late enough.
Mm-hmm. I think maybe one start for Charlie Lindgren, but as opposed to Antti Niemi at this point, I think the Canadiens would much rather, in a situation where they need to rest Price, play Charlie Lindgren as opposed to Antti Niemi. And he's shown that he's been able to play at the NHL level. So even if he may get one game, I personally, in my heart of hearts, depending on what it looks like in the standings at that point, I would like to see him get a second game against Florida a couple days after that Buffalo game. But if Charlie Lindgren has to come into a game, if you're a Canadiens fan, if you're the Montreal Canadiens, I wouldn't necessarily be as scared to see him go in as opposed to Antti Niemi, considering what he's done over his last few starts and throughout various starts throughout the season as well. So I think at least one, but I wouldn't be scared if he gets a second.
You made a good point, though, Dan, about the back-to-back for goalies. I wonder, is it harder for a goalie to play back-to-back, or is it harder for Shea Weber to play 28 minutes as a defenseman back-to-back? I think that's more physically difficult.
There's a lot of different factors, though. It depends on how much puck you're going to be getting in some of those games, depending on how the back-to-backs work, if it's a home and home, if you're traveling the next night as well. I think there's a lot of factors if you're a goalie for those back-to-backs.
I think Carey Price would want to play all the games going through, too.
Yeah,
I think
sure.
that's the way he is. I think if they let him make the decision, he's going to play them all.
So in terms of Charlie Lindgren, Julian, you're saying that you trust him?
Yeah, I mean, I feel he's still very young in his development. He still has a lot to go, but I think in the few games that he's played in the NHL, he's shown he can belong at the NHL level, and I don't think he's that far off from eventually being a backup in the NHL anyway. So I don't see any reason why there could be apprehension with Charlie Lindgren getting to play. I'm not saying you should play him 5-6 games in a row to secure a playoff spot. I'm saying if you're in a situation where Carey Price needs a rest right now versus Antti Niemi, I'm much more sure in Lindgren versus Niemi.
Yeah, I trust Lindgren a lot more than Niemi, and people will look at Lindgren's stats this season and say, he's not that good. He's on a bad team. The Laval Rocket are a tough team. He's not getting a lot of help there, but you're right. He has proven he can play at the NHL. He's got 2 shutouts in the NHL. He's a confident kid. To call up Michael McNiven, who's never played a game in the NHL, and throw him out there in the middle of a playoff race makes absolutely no sense. So, I mean, if they are going to give Carey Price a night off, I think Charlie Lindgren's the guy.
Yeah.
Okay. Following the Canadiens' 5-2 loss in San Jose last Friday, whatever little amount of confidence the team had left in Antti Niemi is almost surely gone. Do you think Niemi has played his last game in the NHL?
I think he has. This was a guy who probably the rest of the league was going to give up on after his stint with the Florida Panthers. And while he did that outstanding 55 save performance against the Panthers earlier this year, too many plays after that where his confidence has just kind of seeped down, and the confidence in the team in him has also gone down. I don't see him playing another game for the Canadiens, and with that at his age, I don't see him playing another game in the NHL, honestly.
Yeah, so he's 35. It's interesting. He earned the contract that he got. He had a really good year last year. Let's not forget that, when he came to Montreal. They were in Tampa after Christmas. They probably would have won that game had he played better. But then he goes to Dallas because Price was here in Montreal. He goes to Dallas. He plays great. But what we saw in San Jose, it's a mental thing to me. I mean, those first 2 goals, how he let them in, I don't know. And then after that, even watching him at practice, too, he's ducking shots. He just doesn't seem to be there mentally. So, if this is the end of the road, it's been a really good career. And I don't blame the Canadiens for bringing him in this year. But it does look like the end of the road.
Well, it looked like his career was over when the Canadiens claimed him. Yeah. I mean, that was his 3rd team that year, and then he saved his career the way he played last year. And then, as you said, a couple of times this year, I think he saved his career because he's had a really bad performance followed by a good performance. But I was in Florida for that game when he let in 3 goals on 9 shots, and it could have been 5 goals.
Yeah.
And I wrote a column the next day saying that they can't play him again. Like, you cannot put this guy back in goal again, and they did. He gave them no chance to win against Florida, and he gave them no chance to win against San Jose. And I think the writing's on the wall. Like, it's whatever it is, whether it's confidence, whether it's age. He's going to be 36 before next season. He can't play in the NHL anymore. He's fighting the puck. He's made he's sliding out of the net. And I'm sure Stefan Waite, the goalie coach, is just going, oh my God, like, what do I do with this guy? So yeah, I think, as you said, he's had a great career. He's won a Stanley Cup. He did a great job last year, but I don't think he can play in the NHL anymore.
Listen, he's 35. I'm 35. I don't think it's a question of age. I'm 35. Like I said, frankly, I think I'm just a few deadlifts away from playing.
Can you
in the
play
NHL.
goalie?
Yeah, probably. Right, give me a call.
35.
I mean, I do this. This is hockey, right? In Tuesday's 3-1 win over the Red Wings, Carey Price broke Jacques Plante's record with his 315th career win. Where would you rank Price among the Canadiens' great goaltenders?
Number 2, behind
Number 2?
Patrick Waugh. Yeah. People will say that Ken Dryden is better. I'm not one of them. He played. He fit those great teams because he was good with a little amount of shots against him, and he obviously had some great moments. 71, he was tremendous. Won the Conn Smythe, but I think Patrick Waugh is the best when you look at what he has won and his body of work. Having said that, I think if you transported magically Price back to any of those eras, he might outplay them all. And there's that sort of an asterisk that the wins that Jacques Plante had there were ties in those days. So, but you look at it. I'm going to say number 2. I know there are people who would say, and our good friend Pat Hickey would say, he's never won a cup. Well, to me, that's not his fault.
No.
And he's. I think by the time it's all said and done, I don't know. It's Waugh is hard to beat for how he lifted the Canadiens to the championship a couple of times, but I'll say number 2, and that's pretty special.
Yeah, you make a good point about Ken Dryden. He played behind the big 3. Guy Lapointe, Larry Robinson, Serge Savard. I mean, look who Carey Price is playing behind. Jordy Ben, Brett Kulak. He's got Shea Weber, an old Shea Weber there. But yeah, I would probably say too. Patrick Waugh to me is still number 1. Price has a losing record in the playoffs, which is always going to be sort of held against him. But look at that series against the Rangers a couple of years ago. He played fantastic. The team couldn't score. Lundqvist was a little bit better than him. The team couldn't score, and it's too much. He's carried so much weight on his shoulders, Carey Price, for so long, and I don't think people realize what it takes a special person to play goalie in Montreal and handle the pressure. It takes an even more special person when all the weight is on you. Talk about Jacques Plante. He won 6 Stanley Cups. He was surrounded by Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
Half the team went to the Hall of Fame. How many Hall of Famers has Carey Price played with? So I think it takes a special kind of person to be able to play goalie in Montreal. Patrick Waugh was that way. Yeah. Carey Price is that way. And I'd say he's number 2 also, Dan. I'll agree with you there.
He's at least never going to be better than Waugh, and not just because of the fact that, Waugh won the hardware that he did, but also the personality that he was and how a lot of people got behind Waugh. While Carey Price, obviously, he has a lot of fans. He was so great. Not nearly the same character that Patrick Waugh was, but if Price wins at least 1 cup before this contract is over, he cements himself as number 2 for sure. There's no doubt about that behind Patrick Waugh. If he finds a way to match the amount of cups that Patrick Waugh had in a Canadiens uniform, then it's a bit more of a debate.
The Laval Rocket are second to last in their division. It looks like they're going to miss the playoffs again this year. How much of a concern is that?
None.
No concern?
No concern.
Okay.
Lots of injuries and that sort of thing. Look, I don't think you can worry about records in the American Hockey League. There's so much player movement. I think it's more about player development. I don't think it is. I know it is. Now, Having said that, leading up to this season, when the affiliate was in St. John's or in Hamilton, they had that problem. But I think more of the problem was that they weren't developing players. So I think it's a new attitude with Joël Bouchard. At least that's what we keep hearing. And I don't think it's an issue. And nobody likes to lose, but I wouldn't be concerned as long as they're showing that individual players, are making progress one by one.
I'll disagree with you on this one, Dan, only because it's like 6 years in a row now they haven't made the playoffs, and I think it says for Sylvain Lefebvre, who was an easy scapegoat. It was all they haven't made the playoffs. It's Coach Sylvain Lefebvre's fault. He left. They bring in the new golden boy as the coach, Joël Bouchard. And it's the same scenario. It doesn't mean that Joël Bouchard's not a good coach. It doesn't mean that Sylvain Lefebvre wasn't a good coach. They don't, as Red Fisher used to say, show me the players. They don't have the players, and they haven't had players on the farm for so long. Like they haven't been able to develop any prospects. Guys haven't come up. Now, from last year's draft, now they have more. You have Ryan Poehling coming up. You have Suzuki coming up. It looks like it's going to change. But I think that losing attitude can be hard for guys. Like, when you're playing in a losing environment so long, I think it just wears on you and wears on you. So I think it is a bit of a concern, but I think moving forward, it will get better. And talking with Charlie Lindgren after he got called up from Laval this week, and he was saying the practices in Laval are brutal. He said, like, Joël Bouchard works these guys. They might not be the best team, but they're the most conditioned team in the league. So I think it's going to change, but I think it's that long to have a losing franchise in the AHL, I think, is a bit of a problem.
It's very weird when you consider with these AHL teams, there's a lot of turnover. There's different rosters virtually every year. And in this particular instance, I think Joël Bouchard arguably had one of the younger squads in the AHL as well. A lot of younger guys like Alexandre Alain, Cale Fleury coming up to play. Jake Evans, of course. There's a lot of young guys coming in who are getting their first taste of pro hockey this year at the Rocket. And, of course, they weren't going to necessarily be flying out the gate and be a playoff team. And now if you're going to have guys like Poehling and Suzuki come up next year and they get to play with those guys who have a year under their belts, and then you add a couple more veteran AHL players like what Bergevin was trying to do last year, but, of course, with all those players getting called up, that kind of made a mess of it, then you're looking at a completely different Rocket team next year. I think it's just the youth this year that kind of held them back a little bit. Not to say that youth is supposed to hold you back, but the point is that they just needed that time to adjust. And I think Joël Bouchard seems like he's a very passionate coach, and he could finally, lead them to more wins. He seems like he knows what he's doing. The players just need to get more experience.
I mean, last year they had so many injuries in Montreal that all the Rocket players ended up playing there. And again, I just think Sylvain Lefebvre was an easy scapegoat last year for what went wrong in Laval. And like I said, Joël Bouchard's a different type of coach. Sylvain Lefebvre is more of a calm, quiet type of guy. Joël Bouchard's more in your face, more hard on guys.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're both good coaches. Just you got to have the players, and they haven't had the players in Laval.
How important is a playoff berth this year for the development of younger Canadiens players?
Huge. I think it's huge. I think, it's to not make even if they don't make the playoffs. I mean, Habs fans keep looking back. 24 Stanley Cups and this and that. It's been 20. It's hard to win the Stanley. Back then it was a 6-team league. It was a lot easier to win the Stanley Cup with all the Hall of Famers they had and everything else. I think that even if the Canadiens don't make the playoffs, if they come up 2 or 3 points short, this has been a great season for them after the disaster of last year. And the experience these guys are getting now, they're playing playoff hockey now, right? Then it's already the playoffs. But I think if they can get in, it'll be huge for this team moving forward, just to give, even if they lose in the first round, just to give these young players a taste of what it's like to play in the playoffs in Montreal. Brendan Gallagher has spoken about that, how so many guys in this room have no idea what it's like to play a playoff game in Montreal. That's what sold Jeff Petrie on re-signing with the Canadiens when they got him from Edmonton and he got to play in the playoffs. And he said, wow, I want to stay here. So I think it's huge that they get there.
I do too. I think, it's going to be right up until the end of the regular season, sort of a playoff atmosphere, but the first round of the playoffs is as intense as it gets for hockey, it seems. So who needs the experience? Domi hasn't played in the playoffs. Antti Niemi. There's guys who are, Phil Deneau, what's he played in 2 playoffs?
The one series, I think.
Yeah, one series.
Mete hasn't played.
Yeah, so there's a lot of guys there. And I think there is something to be said about learning to find out what it takes to compete at that level in that atmosphere. And you know what? This may be getting off topic a bit. You keep hearing about people saying, well, the Canadiens at some point, maybe they should have tanked this year, or it wouldn't be the worst thing if they were to fall off the face of the earth standings-wise. People aren't wired that way. That's not in their DNA. You want to win every time, and they want to make the playoffs. Don't worry. You can't worry about draft picks or where you're going to select. So it is, and just for all of us. I mean, we miss that atmosphere, right? I mean, Montreal is it's just night and day when there's no playoffs here. So I'm being greedy, but I want to see them make it.
Yeah, I like walking around. When the Habs are in the playoffs, I like walking around, seeing people wearing Habs jerseys, going near the arena. Everyone's happy. The
car flags come out.
Even people who don't care about hockey at all of a sudden, they start watching the games. They start going to bars with everyone watching it. Not to mention, there's all the restaurants and different establishments who love the business, right? Everyone in Montreal loves it when the Montreal Canadiens are in the playoffs. Selfishly, I want to see them make the playoffs as well and just kind of enjoy that whole experience. So imagine as a player playing in that environment and, walking around the city and everyone's wearing their Habs gear and paraphernalia. That's a huge, for a guy like Jesperi Kotkaniemi, imagine him going through that for the first time. He would probably love this.
Well, fans who talk about tanking have a short memory. Remember at this time last year? I mean, it was like, oh my God, let the season end. I mean, I remember sitting in the press box saying, thank God I'm getting paid to watch this. It was brutal. Like, you want to go through that again? You want to go through games that don't matter, fans that don't care? I mean, the Canadiens franchise took a hit last year. I mean, there was empty seats at the end of last season. There's been empty seats this season. Fans stopped caring about the team. Yep. That's worse than being upset. I mean, fans stopped caring about the Canadiens, and fans care again now. And they're going to care right to the end as they get to the playoffs. And as I said, this has been, nobody predicted this. I didn't predict this. Nope. I didn't think this was a playoff team. I thought they had no hope in hell of making the playoffs. They've had an exciting season. It's been a lot of fun to watch. So sit back, enjoy the ride, have fun, and hopefully they make it.
It's also way too late to tank at this point in the year, considering with where they're at. So unless they find a way to spectacularly lose all of those games, even then.
You're going to tell Brendan Gallagher to tank?
Yeah,
he's not going to do Max Domi, and there's too much pride. I mean, players don't tank. Organizations try to tank by putting a bad product on the ice. And this is a compared to last year, it's night and day. This is a fun team to watch. It's been fun to watch all year. They compete, they play hard. When you think they're out, they don't give up, they fight back. So if they don't make the playoffs, they're going to go down with a fight.
I still believe they can do it. I think the effort and what they've done this season is so admirable. Even if they don't, they should be proud of themselves, but I still hold hope that they can. All right, that is all for this week's show. We want to thank you all for tuning in at home. Should Charlie Lindgren start in goal before the season's end, or should they ride out Carey Price? Is there anyone left out there who still believes in Antti Niemi? Let us know in the comments section below. I'm Adam Susser, and we'll see you back here next Thursday.